Our journey has taken us to the foot of the cross. It is a sign that is virtually universal. Christianity takes its very form and shape from the cross. Every Mass or service of the Lord's Supper is a reenactment of Christ's sacrificial death. Church buildings through the centuries have been built in the shape of a cross. If we were to go downtown to one of the shopping malls, just about anywhere, today or any day, we would find countless people wearing crosses around their necks. The side of a cross calls to mind the horror of Christ's execution and, of course, the glory of his resurrection. In the story, things have gotten pretty bad. Those closest to Jesus thought their world had died with our Lord's arrest, conviction, and execution. Stakes had been high, and the general belief was that all had been lost. The hosannas of the triumphal entry have given way to the horror of Gethsemane and Calvary. How did we get here? Prophet Isaiah puts it this way: all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Like Jeremiah, Amos, Micah, Zechariah, and other prophets, the second Isaiah states powerfully the human propensity for going beyond the limits and replacing God's will with our own. We know what we do. We know what happens when we go too far. We understand our guilt individually and collectively, but we don't do anything about it. So the second Isaiah foresaw what God would provide and how the very people who needed their guilt taken away would treat the one who made himself a sacrifice for us. This one was despised, rejected, held to be of no account. He was taken from the land of the living by the sin of those who deserved the punishment. He was seized, abused, beaten. Even the man who tried the case said he was innocent, and yet condemned him to die by the most horrible means of execution known as crucifixion. And yet by his blood he reconciled us. By his wounds we are healed. It had to happen. It all had to happen. At the right time there was a servant of God, and he did suffer. Every gospel writer gives his account of the cross from a little different angle, and typically we get those accounts on Palm Sunday. Today, Good Friday, we hear John's account, which shows Jesus in the hands of the temporal rulers, but does not allow him to be at the mercy of Jewish or Roman leaders. Any doubt is overcome by Jesus' words at the end of John's narrative. It is finished. Jesus willingly lays down his life, which none can take away. It's all part of the plan. God ordains it. Jesus is willing to endure it. The cross was Jesus' way. So what does that mean to us? One of my heroes, Jim Elliot, was a martyr missionary of near legend status in the 1950s, when he and 4 other missionaries were killed by Indians to whom they were trying to minister in South America. A movie made not too long ago called End of the Spear, which has been made about these missionaries. It's a great movie. I commend it. Jim Elliot's wife, Elizabeth, remained in Ecuador for many years as a minister of reconciliation to the very tribe that killed her husband. Son of another missionary, Nate Saint, was baptized by one of the tribe who killed his father. It's an amazing story. While Jim Elliot published few of his own writings, Elizabeth Elliot had many of his journals published after his death. Following is something called Desire for the cross, which Jim Elliot wrote. Oh, that Christ were all and enough for me. He is supposed to be. But oh, to be swept away in a flood of consuming passion for Jesus, that all desire must be sublimated to him. Copied a few lines from Maxwell's Born Crucified Yesterday, which I must learn. The cross falls like a two-edged sword of heavenly temper keen, and double were the wounds it made where'er it glanced between. 'Twas death to sin, 'twas life to all who mourned for his sin. It kindled and it silenced strife, made war and peace within. Jim Elliot came to realize that everything else in his life mattered little once he understood the power of the cross. He's later quoted as saying, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose." Jesus gave himself, his very body, as a sacrifice for sin once for all. He has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God, where he waits for his foes to be made a footstool for his feet. And we are left at the foot of the cross with a choice to make this day. The choice between everything or nothing, between God's will and our own self-will, between true grace and the false righteousness that we imagine ourselves to possess, between waging war in the world and being reconciled with God and our neighbor. We can let ourselves go and reach out for the infinite grace that comes from the sacrifices, or the ultimate sacrifice, I should say, that Christ made. We can die with Christ, and by God's grace, wait for that blessed Easter morning. Amen.